On today's show, part one with my friend Tyler Jones, we talk all things Hawks at the All-Star break, and all of that is coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1655 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Monday here in mid-February into Tuesday. And today's show, we'll be diving into myself and Tyler Jones in part one of a two-part conversation. Tyler is a friend of the podcast, always a highly requested guest on the show, and a fun conversation as always. I should encourage you at the top of the show to make us your first listen each and every day. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, places like Apple and Spotify and YouTube, etc. And without any further delay, here's myself and Tyler digging into all things Hawks at the All-Star break, and here we go. I am joined once again by my friend Tyler Jones. How are you, sir, in the middle of the All-Star break?
How are you, sir? Last time we talked, I don't know if the Wolverines won the title. So congratulations on that. You know,
if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing a Michigan National Championship shirt.
I believed in Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines. You didn't. Every time I was like, "Oh, they're winning it this year." You're like, "No, they're not." I'm like, "Okay." You know.
I'm an Atlanta sports fan. What do you want me to do?
All the metrics said the Wolverines were the best college team this year. So
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I almost wish I covered the team more if people could see how I actually am when I'm just being a fan, because on Hawk stuff, I'm covering the team. I'm being professional. I was not professional at all at Michigan. Just losing my mind the whole time.
Speaking of fandom, the Falcons got a new coach, Arthur Smith. He's out the paint.
By Artie. I
don't think he was well liked in Atlanta.
He was not. As someone who lives here, he was not well liked.
Making an enemy of the softest sports media. Like just actively being antagonistic to like people who don't ask hard questions. I'm shocked that Arthur Smith wasn't well received publicly.
Artie didn't. It didn't go well for Artie, especially at the end. That last game was an all. As we get further and further away from it, the last game and the Saints. The whole Saints thing was that was a pleasure.
Well, he took that personally, man.
He really did. But hey, listen, I hope he does well in Pittsburgh. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm sure I'll get a note from somebody at the higher up that says start the podcast with Hawks talk. But hey, here we are. It's what we do when Tyler comes on the podcast. It's been a little while, as you sort of allude to there. We're in the middle of the All-Star break, pretty much right in the middle actually for the Hawks, who actually have they're tied for it. They're tied for the longest break because they didn't play the last day there were games, and they don't play the first day there were games on the way back. So they actually have more than a week. They have 9 days between games. Trey was involved over the weekend in Indianapolis. I joke with some people on the show. Yeah, well, I've been on the show, like people are wanting me to do like All-Star game content on the or All-Star weekend content on the podcast. I'm like, well, what is there to say really about his performance? Like he did a good job in the 3-point contest. He almost won it. He seemed to be pretty happy with the performance. All-Star game, he barely played. He was the last guy to get in on Sunday. He was injury replacement, so like it wasn't that terribly shocking to me. But I don't think you were watching most of this stuff. Were you dialed in?
Oh, I didn't see a single second of All-Star Weekend. I don't. What is there? It's not for me anymore. Like no All-Star Weekend,
nor me.
Pretty bad for like the better part of over a decade now. Like it's been like 15 years since I cared about anything that happened in the All-Star game. Except for the one year where the Hawks had 4 guys in it, and then the coach where was like when they had 4 guys, I was watching that because I was, Kyle Korver was an all-star. You got it.
They got the one run with LeBron and those 4 guys, and it was like
and LeBron was just throwing dimes to Kyle. He was like, wait a minute, who is this Kyle Korver? I need him on my team because he was like, LeBron enjoyed that. And I was like, yeah, man, Hawks could have had those 4 guys and like KD or LeBron or somebody, but
would have been nice. No, I'm with you. And I tweeted it like, I watch it out of professional obligation. I do enjoy the 3-point contest still. And I think the Steph versus Sabrina thing was actually really good. I like that. That was a good idea. Glad they did it. commentary aside around it.
But what about the 3-point line, Brad?
I don't want to talk about that. That's so stupid. Kenny, I like Kenny a lot. That was a bad moment for Kenny at the end of that. But that was a good event. That was a good event. The dunk contest was terrible as it always is. I will say, Jacob Toppin got robbed. No one cares because he's a G League player, but he got robbed.
Jacob Toppin, Max McClung, and who's the Heat player?
Jaime Jaquez, my guy.
Jaime Jaquez, yeah. Jamie Jaquez. He's Jaime Jaquez. And Jaylen Brown. I'm shocked. Those guys didn't light up the arena in Indianapolis. Oh,
I thought McClung was good, but he always is, and he's a G League player. It is what it is.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown got booed apparently.
He did. I don't think Pacers fans like the Celtics. They also booed somebody else. I can't remember.
They booed Dame.
Oh yeah, Dame, because that was another thing. Because Milwaukee, I guess they were just Pacers fans showed out. I suppose. Anyway, all that said, there were some minor waves made at the end of the night on Sunday. Shouts to Jamila Johnson, who I believe was the only person from Atlanta who was in Indianapolis. She posted the video of the question she asked of Trey Young post game on Sunday. If you missed it, by the way, I did a whole 2/3 of a show on this on Friday about all the trade rumblings. We'll get into that a little bit now. It's sort of a good jumping off point because Jamila asked Trey. I can't share the video. If you want to find it, go find out Jamila's content. You should be following her anyway.
Follow her on Patreon as well.
Huh?
Follow her on Patreon as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jamila's the best. All that said, people got had their reactions to what Trey said. He was fairly candid. It's kind of a continuation of what we've talked about before. You and I and Kevin and Glenn have talked about this. Like, Trey has become much more confident, comfortable with the media. He's pretty open these days. He gives real answers in a way he didn't used to. And he talked about how he wanted to win a championship and got a lot of attention there, but it was through the lens of being drafted by the team that you want to win with. I thought it was a realistic answer, a real answer. If you want, people that wanted to see the negative saw the negative. People that wanted to see the positive saw the positive. Not even necessarily about that, but I want to know what you think of the whole thing, because as I went through painstakingly in my analytical way, and part of the reason why it's so good that you're here is that you are a Hawks fan, and I'm coming to it from the media side of things. About I went through it. No one has reported anything on the Hawks side. It's all second and third hand information, and it's from good reporters, but no one's reported, hey, the Hawks are going to do this because the Hawks want to do this. It's all rival executives and all that stuff, and then you got the Trey stuff. So all that said, where are you at on this? What are you thinking about the Trey situation right now? Because it feels like it's the offseason, and it's not. It's mid-season. There's still games that are about to happen this week, and it's a weird time. Today's show is brought to you by Grammarly. I host and produce this podcast by myself, and that requires sending a ton of emails and making a ton of notes. No matter what kind of work you happen to do, how you communicate is really important, and all of those emails and notes and reports are equally important to the collaboration that you need to get things done in your life. Grammarly can help with all of that. Grammarly is your AI writing partner that helps you communicate more effectively and efficiently in order to make a big impact at your workplace. Whenever I communicate with different supervisors or managers in sports writing space, I've always used Grammarly to help me work efficiently and confidently. It really saves time. It also helps you with clarity to get things done the way that you want to the first time, and really it's very, very important and through that lens. And better writing also helps you make a stronger impact in your workplace. 96% of Grammarly users report that Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. Grammarly works over 500,000 apps and websites, and by understanding your writing and context, they provide relevant, personalized suggestions. Make a bigger impact at your work right now with the folks at Grammarly. Sign up and download for free at Grammarly.com/podcast. That is Grammarly.com/podcast. One more time, Grammarly.com/podcast.
Exactly. It's people trying to make it feel like the offseason because they think the Hawks season is over, even though they're 5 games out of the 7th or 8th seed. I haven't looked recently, but
they are 6 games behind the 8th seed, but that's also the 7th seed. They're tied at 7 and 8, and they're 2 games behind the 9th seed. There you go.
Yeah, so it's still got roughly 30 some odd games left to go in the season, so there's plenty of time for them to turn it around, go on a run, et cetera, et cetera. But my takeaway on the trade stuff is the Hawks will not trade him unless he asks out. And he said pretty plainly that his contract. He's not worried about the trade rumors, and that he's here for the next couple seasons based on the contract, which I believe still has 4 years or 3 years left on the deal.
It's got 3 years left. It's 2. So after this, assume the season is over, he has 2 more, and then the player option.
Correct.
I would assume that, as most guys at that level, he will probably opt out, because that's the natural financial thing that everyone should do. If you're still a max player, you opt out of that year and get another contract, which is not like anything. That's not anything weird. That's just a normal thing. So I'm guessing it'll be opt out after 2, but he has 2 more guaranteed years post of this, and then the player option.
The larger point is he's going to be here next season. Barring like a catastrophe or something, like he's like not basketball related, but he's going to be on the Hawks for the season after this one, guaranteed. And then if the Hawks are still in this morass of 500, maybe there's a discussion, because I think the bigger thing is that Trey wants to win. Like, and everything that he's done this season shows me as somebody who, like, you go listen to earlier podcasts I had about Trae Young. Like, I wasn't the biggest, I was not the biggest believer in Trey due to his attitude towards like everything, towards the media, towards other players, like his demeanor. Like, he's cleaned up so much in such a short period of time under Quinn Snyder. To me, I feel like he's happy with the situation he's in right now. That doesn't mean he'll continue to be happy, especially if the wins don't come. So to me, I'm like, sounds like he's good, unless the Hawks are going to pivot and decide to rebuild, which they're not going to do, because people show up to games to watch Trey Young play basketball. He's the only star that has ever been true for the Hawks since Dominique Wilkins. And Dominique didn't play in Atlanta when I was born. So, like, and I'm 32 years old right now. So, like, the point is, Trey isn't going anywhere. The owner has no incentive. And also, Trey, just another aside, like, I'm pretty sure if he gets traded, he's not eligible for that Supermax extension, another one that he might be eligible for if he makes All-NBA this season. So,
which he still could do. It may not be likely because the teams. And not to read that, we don't go down this rabbit hole. But
he should be on All-NBA, but whatever. I mean, I think honestly the trade stuff. I don't have anything for you, Brad, because
no, I understand. No, I'm bringing it up because it's the number topic right now.
It's just not something that I find realistic. Like,
part of it, and part of it, and we'll move on. Part of it is like, it's. I said it a little bit on Friday too, but he's visibly, and from what I hear, even anecdotally behind, he's more bought in than he's probably ever been. And that's the interesting part about this. Obviously, when you come in as a rookie, like, you kind of have to be bought in. Like, you're not established yet. But since he's become Trey Young in capital letters, like, the defense, I mean, you don't want to overstate the defensive thing, but like, anybody who's watched the team this year for any length of time can tell you that he's a different defender than he's ever been.
He's a difference maker on defense in the most important times of games, because like other teams' primary ball handlers don't actually want to deal with Trey Young hedging and recovering off of them. He's gotten really good at that to the point that he causes turnovers, and like he's won multiple games this season just off his defense. So, like, to me,
it's not just eye test either. By the way, it's like if you're a believer in the advanced metrics at all, like, they don't tell you that he's a great defender, but metrics that he's always ranked terribly in, EPM, LeBron, Raptors gone away, but like metrics that always would tell you that he was terrible, and it was true. They're also, in addition to the eye test, they're telling you that he's not anymore. Like, he's 40th percentile in these metrics, which is not great, but for a 6'1" point guard, that's kind of all you have to be. You know what I mean? It's not like, and so between that and like even just the way he talks about Quinn, he's bought into Quinn. This is kind of anecdotal, but it's just another data point. People kind of notice this. I don't want to say anything about it on Twitter, but I'm not sure if you saw this, the Tyrese Halliburton clip about Quinn, right? First of all, Halliburton's a very smart basketball player, and he's talking at a very high level JJ Redick about how Quinn runs this great stuff. True. I shared it, and this is not Trey, but Trey's father, Ray, replied to me and said that Trey talks about Quinn like this all the time. No, that's a player's dad. It doesn't mean it's gospel, but like that's a data point. Like you hear this stuff like Trey's bought in with Quinn. It is what it is. Now, does that mean he's thrilled with everything else? Like maybe
Brad,
not.
This point that we're talking about is so obvious to anybody who's seen the Hawks, who's in the Hawks sphere of influence, quote unquote. Like if you're a Hawks fan, or if you're a reporter on the Hawks, or you work in the Atlanta sports media, you've noticed the change from year to year with Trey Young, especially this year. It's been a transformative change. Hasn't led to wins. We could talk about why that hasn't later, but like
he is not okay. We agree on this. I'm just going to say it out loud for anybody that might be finding the podcast for the first time. I understand that anytime a team underachieves, two people get blamed: the head coach and the best player.
Yep.
I don't think that Trey Young would be in my top 25 reasons the Hawks have struggled this year, as far as on-court play is concerned.
If Trey wasn't on the team, they'd be one of the worst teams in basketball. Like
I tend to agree, and the results.
Even with all the good players on this team, they would be horrendous because they wouldn't be able to get stops with or without Trey.
Yeah,
and also their offense, which is elite, would be bad or mediocre.
There's other ways to talk about it too. Like it's to your point earlier about how you weren't always the biggest buyer of Trey. Early in his career, I regularly got told by fans angrily that I was too low on Trey. Always. And I never said he was bad or anything. I wasn't a Kool-Aid drinker. I covered the team objectively. That's what I try to do. I don't know if you've noticed this. It's flipped a little bit. Like even locally, I know you don't live here right now, but you're from here. Like he gets more heat than he's ever gotten. I'm not exactly sure why, other than just the team's not winning. But like now, the Trey Bay thing is the most famous example of this that we make fun of. I get accused of being too high on him now. It's like nothing, Brad, not really.
That's what comes with expectations. That's what comes with being as good as he's been.
Today's show is brought to you by Nissan. Are you ever the kind of driver who likes to push things a little bit further? Do you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner when you're driving? Our friends at Nissan have a line of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes as well. It also has class-exclusive Google built-in that is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything in your life. Gone are the days of connecting that phone to the actual car, because Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system with the Nissan Rogue. And the 2024 Rogue is the perfect size crossover for your next adventure. And they also have an incredible lineup at Nissan that includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder. Pathfinder has room up to 8 people, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. It has 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds of towing. And with that, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer that call. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. One more time, that's nissanusa.com.
These conversations, this is what happened. Like Trey talk about elite players on teams that aren't winning. That's just standard. Like that's why I'm not interested in it, because I'm like, that's just the nature of the business.
Yeah.
All the stars go through literally every single tier of basketball player who's at Trey Young's tier, which is future Hall of Famer, which is what Trey's going to be.
He is on pace for it.
Yeah. Like, if you're not winning, you're in trade talks. Dame, his entire career in Portland, trade talks.
And Dame is probably like the most similar situation / player in the last 15 years to Trey. Like they're different players of position, but same position, one conference final appearance as the best player, scoring point guard, like a lot of similarities between Trey and Dame, a lot of them. And to your point, you're right. And then of course he got traded at the end because he finally said, okay, trade me essentially. Until then he wasn't going to get traded and Portland was holding steady. Like, I mean, it is what it is.
Even current Luka gets it. Zion gets it.
Oh yeah, everybody gets it unless you're at a certain level.
Until the Thunder won this season, SGA was getting it. Like this is the nature of you're an elite player, but your team's bad. Other teams are going to try to acquire you because they want you to win. What I find more interesting, actually, beyond this trade talk, I don't find the trade talk interesting. I find interesting that the players don't consider Trey. Don't vote him to be one of the best players, because if he got the votes, he'd be starting. Like he had the van vote. The players and the coaches don't consider Trey to be on this level. which I find to be interesting because
especially the coaches.
Especially coaches, because it's not backed up by how they defend the Hawks.
Correct.
DeJounte Murray is a good three-point shooter. Why is it every single game, every defender that's guarding DeJounte Murray off the ball is hedging on his man so that Trae doesn't have an easy driving lane? Every single time. Unless Bogey's in the game, it's harder for Trae to operate, to do what he wants to do, because Bogey's the only shooter, perimeter player other teams respect. Teams don't respect DeJounte when he's playing with Trae. Not that because DeJounte is bad or mediocre. DeJounte is putting up borderline all-star numbers, but it doesn't matter because teams are like, we would rather lose if DeJounte Murray was going to beat us off catch and shoot three-pointers than allowing Trey Young to go off for 30 and 15. Because he will get 30 and 15 and a half, Brad. If you guard Trae straight up like he's Dame Lillard, like no disrespect.
No, we talked about it. You and I.
If he's like Darius Garland, if you want to guard Trey Young, like he's a good player and not sacrifice anything, he's going to eat you alive.
We even said it in the middle of halves.
That's why in the playoffs. I'm sorry to get on this rant about Trae and how good he is. That's why in playoffs, he's a problem. Because you know what you can't do? You just can't give DeJounte Murray the open catch and shoot three-pointer. You just can't give Sadiq Bey an open corner three-pointer. You can do it in the regular season because you know what? They're going to miss. And if they miss or they make, it's just one game. If they go on a run, if they get in a rhythm, you might lose the series because you gave DeJounte Murray eight open three-pointers to get in a rhythm. You might lose the series now because now you got to play him straight up and you got to worry about Trae. That's why even if the Hawks make the playoffs as the 8th seed, they will always have a chance, just like they had a chance against the Celtics, which is why Trey Young makes supermax money, because you have Trey Young. Because offensively, there's nothing you can do as a team to stop him without playing jump defense. Period.
That's the gap last year.
That's why I'm confused. One, why all these people think the Hawks are just going to trade that type of player away when he's a genuine bona fide difference maker. There ain't that many in the NBA. He's a blue blood difference maker in this league because of his ability on the offensive side of the floor. What I don't understand is why he doesn't get respect that he deserves from coaches and players and the people who run Team USA. That's what bothers me. This trade talk coming from people who are like, the Hawks are definitely likely going to trade Trey Young in the offseason. Based on what, bro? That's what I want to know. Based on what? What? Money? Finance situation? You know what the Supermax rules are. Is it based on the team? The Hawks aren't a disaster. They're just not that good yet. Doesn't mean they can't get there with a couple of moves. We can talk about the couple of moves they can put later in the podcast, but I just want to make it clear about Trey Young. He's that dude, and he's not going anywhere unless the offseason happens, and he's like, I want out. And even then, trade him for another season. Because you know why? Because it's not in the Hawks' best interest to trade him after this season based on his contract. You know, like if I'm the Hawks owner, I'm like, no, we got you signed for another season, and then we'll go. You know what I'm saying? But that's not. I don't feel like with everything that's going on with Trae, how his demeanor has changed, how he's talking to the media, how like insightful he's been. Like I don't see that in the cards for Trae. I think he wants to be here. I think he wants to win. He wants to be like, to me, if I'm Trey Young, he gets to put his stamp on this city of Atlanta, which hasn't had many superstars in the Hawks' career. He's on pace to be the greatest Atlanta Hawk ever. Period. Just based on his accomplishments on the floor. Why would he I'm like, there is value in that for a player. And I think Trae wants to be that. He wants to be what Steph Curry is for the Warriors in Atlanta. That's probably the best way.
So all that is fair. We don't have to keep talking about this. I just, I think that it gets lost, and I did mention it on Friday too. And yeah, you could argue that this shouldn't, if you want to be as cold and calculate, like trust me, I'm guilty of being cold and calculating about basketball a lot. Like that's part of what I'm doing. But like, it does matter, no matter what anybody says. It matters that the Hawks. I mean, you know as well as I'm older than you are, but not by that much. Our entire childhood, teenage years, 20s, everybody in the city. That's a broad brush, but it's true. Anybody in the city is like, the Hawks need a star. 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 No one was ever satisfied. Even when they were good, they were pretty good for a long time. With Al and Joe and Josh and all those guys, they were pretty good for a long time. And no one was cool with it because they didn't have a star. Nope. And Joe, by the way, Joe was a 7-time All-Star. Joe Johnson was a 7-time All-Star. And it wasn't good enough.
Famer, didn't care. Don't care.
Wasn't good enough.
I mean, so he wasn't. He's not. Joe Johnson is not on Trey level.
He's not. He's not.
Close to what Trey's done.
And I love Joe. I think Joe's underrated. But you're right. And I'm saying that to say that the Trey Young era so far has not maybe gone the way that people thought it might go after the conference finals run. You know what I mean? Like I think.
But they had the conference finals won.
I know. They
could have won that series if Trey didn't get hurt. This is what I'm confused about.
I know.
This is what I'm confused about by these fans. What's with this short-term memory, Hawks fans? Who are like, it's Trey's
fault. You know how this is. Well, a lot of it is people
45 in the Garden against Boston by himself with no DeJounte Murray because he got himself suspended.
Yeah, I mean, even
the game was over.
And they also, come
on, man.
That series was recently. We'll leave it alone. But all I'm saying is, people have just kind of forgotten that. And yeah, there's a real debate, and we won't have it now about like which level Trey is on. You can think that I'm too high on Trey. That's fine. I don't care. He's not LeBron. He's not Kate. Like he's not a top 5 player in the league. He's not. But I know. I see you. But all that said, teams rebuild looking for someone like Trey. The Hawks just rebuilt looking for someone like Trey, and they got him. And they built poorly around him, I would argue. I would argue the front office and ownership are the problem more than Trey is, more than Quinn is. That's all different stuff. But I just don't. And look, you mentioned it. And look, I had someone call me, just to be extremely transparent, after I said on Friday, where I said that I have never heard really anything about Trey being traded unless he wants to be traded. And like, after that, people around the team, I would say, that's the way I'll put it, around the situation. I've heard people like, people are more skeptical than I am about it. And that's fine. Did that interview on Sunday with Jamila change my mind about anything? No, it didn't. Could Trey ask for a trade this summer? Could he? Yeah, of course he could.
Yeah.
Of course he could. He's a guy that wants to win. They're not winning. He has clutch representation. Clutch has done no matter what you think about Rich Paul, they do a great job of getting what their clients want. Always. They do a great job with that. Whether fans like it or not, they usually get their guys where they want to be. So like, if that happened, would I fall on the floor? No, I wouldn't fall on the floor. But that's a different conversation.
But the conversation that was being had was the insinuation that the Hawks would trade Trey.
And that's what I mean.
That's right. Why I'm like, that's
I've still never heard that. I've still never heard that. Doesn't mean just to be very clear, I've never said that there's no chance of that because I don't know. Maybe somebody in that front office or on the staff or an owner, maybe Tony's just done with Trey. I don't know. I'm not reporting anything like that. I've never heard anybody that I trust that would insinuate or tell me that they're thinking about trading Trey Young without him being asked. Now, I could be wrong. When Mark Stein and Jake Fisher report this stuff, it does matter. Your eyebrows raise, but even Jake and nobody attributed it to the Hawks. It's all rival executives and all that stuff. So like,
and Jake couched it under the notion that this is similar to what Giannis and Embiid.
I think he said wishful thinking was what
exactly
around the league.
Where it's like, yeah, they're in trade rumors too because if you're not winning championships, you got to be traded to another team so that you can also not win a championship.
He's the next guy up. He's the next guy up. And honestly, I almost did this on Friday and I forgot to do it on the show because it would have taken me too long. But like, if you go down the list, I think Trey and Donovan Mitchell are the guys who are kind of on the list of like, okay, let's do this cycle of transactions and go through like who could be available. And the thing was, Donovan was the one, I'm sure you remember this, that was getting talked about a lot in October, November, December this year as being the next guy who could be available. And then the Cavs won like 18 out of 20 or something. And when your team wins, you're no longer available. You know what I mean? And you can go 1 through 30 or 1 through 40 of the top players in the league. And the guys who were like in a position to be traded or whatever, like Trey's just kind of on that list of like speculation. You know what I mean? Like LeBron, obviously there's a lot of intrigue about LeBron's next step, but LeBron is LeBron. He's in his own category. A lot of these other guys are under contract or they're not going to be traded. Luka's not going to be traded unless he wants to be traded. Giannis just re-signed. Like you can go on the list, and you get to Donovan and Trae, and then Cleveland got good for a while, and that quieted that. And the Hawks, to your point, haven't been good this year, and that means their chatter goes higher. And also, the two teams that are linked to Trae so far, linked is very loose at this point, the Lakers and the Spurs, right? Those are very sexy topics because of two reasons. One, it's the Lakers, who are tied to every single player who's ever available, no matter what. And the other one is Victor Wembanyama, who objectively would fit perfectly with Trey Young. So, like, you can see why people would want that to happen. But again, rival executives. That's not anybody in Atlanta.
Yeah, just put a touchstone on this. Like, I can see a scenario where if the season goes in the toilet, like if they lose a lot, you know, and they don't make the play in and stuff like that, maybe there's a conversation to be had between Trey, his team, and the Hawks about maybe this not being the team. But like, just based on the evidence I have, which is me watching the games, me hearing what Trey says after the games, Trey speaking to the media at all after games, win or lose, which that's not something he used to do. He's doing it this season. So I'm like, I'm just like, I feel like he's committed to this team as of right now, and he's committed for next season. I think if we're having this conversation next year, it's more likely. I just think it's too early in the cycle. If that makes sense to you. Not saying he will never be traded or any of this.
Oh, no.
I just personally, I'm like, it's too early. It's too early.
Trey kind of alluded to it in the answer to the game to Jamila. The reality is, the smart money would be on Trey being traded at some point. Count the guys on one hand who have not been traded in our lifetime. It's basically Kobe, who was almost traded, by the way. Kobe wanted to be traded and then wasn't. And Dirk wasn't traded. And Dwayne Wade left. Dwayne Wade, who was like another guy on that list, ended up leaving at the end. Like most guys get traded. LeBron hasn't been traded, but he got signed and traded and wanted to leave, change teams. Like no one's, I shouldn't say no one, but like
Steph Curry.
It is so yeah. So far, Steph's not been traded.
But Steph was earlier in his career. Similar age.
I'm saying there's like a 0.0%. Yeah, 0.01% of guys don't ever get traded and start like maybe Trey will do that, but like the smart money is at some point he won't be on the Hawks anymore. Even all-time greats have not done that.
I'll just say this: like Trey's situation similar to what Devin Booker went through, even though the Hawks have won a lot more. But like the Suns were
early on, yeah.
Suns were a disaster until they got Chris Paul. And then they started winning, but like Devin's a little weird because he wasn't on that at the same time. Devin was good, but he wasn't as good as
he wasn't viewed like that. Yeah,
not to say he wasn't good, but he's gotten so much better in a short period of time recently, where he's actually on that tier of player. He used to not be on that tier, but like Devin is.
I do think. I think Dame is the parallel, and it's you know, Dame is older by a few years, but they followed similar tracks, and Dame just got traded to Milwaukee as the number 2 guy. We'll see if that works out for. He's not a great year, as we talked about before, but anyway, we can leave trade discussion behind us and talk about other things. All right, that is all for part 1 of 2 with my friend Tyler Jones. Part 2 should be available in your podcast feed of choice right now, so stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. Also, my written work on the Hawks is available to be read and sift through at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Thanks for listening. Part 2 should be available right now, and we'll see you all next time.